All right, so once I'm done, I'm going to first remove my needle and turn that in. So after removing the needle, I will turn it over and peel off the tape, holding on my first warp string. Once I have taken off the tape that was holding my first warp string and flip it over, I'm going to see my cover, so the little cover that flaps over my pouch. I'm going to be starting on that. So I've got the one string already released, so I'm going to cut one extra really close to the top of the board so that I'm giving myself some space to tie these in a knot. And I'm going to tie them like I did in 5th grade. So I'm going to tie them once, and then I have to tie them a second time to make sure that it is a knot that won't come apart. I'm not going to really pull real hard when I'm tying that knot because I don't want this to scoot down. I want that to stay even for the flap. Now if I check across the rest, I have pairs. So it's evenly spaced, so I should be cutting 2 and then tying those 2 together until I get all the way across this side. Then my flap will be complete.
All right, so now that my flap has been released, I'm going to switch sides and organize my strings so that I don't get them mixed up when I'm tying. And you're gonna obviously notice that they're released from doing cutting on the other side. So I'm gonna take the first 2 and I'm going to tie them in a knot. And again, I don't want to pull, because see how it will tug against my weaving. I definitely don't want to be pulling so tight on those knots. There we go. So we want to make sure that we tie it kind of straight across. So we're not going to pull super tight on these knots. So then I'm going to tie it again. And the second one, that's when I should be able to tie a little bit on the tighter side. And I'm going to do 2, the next 2. So I'm going to do pairs all the way across until I get to the end. Okay, so now I'm at the end, and you're going to notice I have 3 strings. So instead of tying 2 together, I'm going to take and hold 2 strings in one hand and 1 in the other, and I'm going to tie exactly like I was doing 2 strings, but instead of having 2 in my hand, I actually have 3. Okay, so I'm not doing really anything different except for that in one hand I'm holding 2 strings instead of 1, okay? But I'm doing the knot the same, and I'm actually going to tie 3rd time just on that knot last one because it had 3 strings in it, just to be on the safe side, okay? So at this time, my weaving is completely off the top of the board. All right, so now that my weaving is completely cut from the board, the fun part is actually removing it. So at this time, I'm going to be pulling against the top of the board, and I'm going to pull nice and tight, and I'm going to use my both hands to tug from the bottom as well, and I'm going to just pull it until I can see the tape, because this end is still taped here, so it's going to make my bag look really awkward right now, because this side wants to come down and act like a normal bag. This side's stuck. So once I can see that tape, I'm just going to pull it off. I'm not going to worry about the tape still being there. I'm going to get rid of the board. So I can actually see it's completely removed from the board, right? But at this point, I'm going to do some cleanup now. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is flip my bag inside out. Okay, so I'm going to squish it and just flip it inside out so that I can find that piece of tape that's still connected to that last warp string, okay? And there it is. So I'm gonna hold the warp string and pull that tape and just remove it. All right, so here's the tricky part. Now that I have it inside out and I found the warp string, I'm actually going to find my starting weaving string, which is also in the same corner, but tucked way inside. So here's the bottom starting string where I began my weaving. So I'm going to decide if I want my weaving to be this way or if I want it to face inside out. I think I like this side better, which means that I'm going to take my warp string and I'm just going to push that through to the inside. And then I'm going to use that starting string, that starting piece of yarn, and my ending warp string. I'm going to tie those in a knot so they're secure. And then I can even trim it a little bit and flip it right back. Okay, so now my bag is complete. All I want to do is some minor cleanup, okay? So I'm going to get rid of some of these bigger strings that I don't need, okay? If I see any knots that are sticking out on this side, I'm going to actually take my hand and put it inside the bag. So there's a knot right here. I'm just going to push with my needle on the knot, and I'm going to push the knot to the inside of the bag. So instead of seeing it on the outside, I'll have the knot on the inside. I can trim some of these strings on the inside too, where these knots are. I may want to trim some of that off. It doesn't have to be that long. It might get snagged on something that I try to put in my bag. And I'm also going to go through and I'm going to trim these warp strings because I know they're going to get in my way if I don't trim them up. I'm not going to trim them all the way to the knot. I'm going to trim approximately 1/4 inch from the knot. And you don't have to measure, you can just kind of guess on that, okay? So once I have my weaving cleaned up, then I'm going to put my name on it with a strip of masking tape just on the front side or the flap, somewhere where it's visible. I'm going to put my name and hour on the masking tape and I'm going to turn it into the finished bucket.